Gator Nation, we got to commit, and it is Davian Groce, athlete out of Frisco, Texas. He's played running back. He's played wide receiver in high school, and will be more of a wide receiver prospect for the Gators. Checks in with a good size, 6'1", 190 pounds. Now, I'm not going to lie. This one I thought had pretty much faded to Oklahoma. He visited Florida over the summer. And going into that visit, to the Florida visit, didn't think much of him because I just think he wouldn't be in the cards eventually. Well, that visit to Gainesville even surprised him and his family. Florida put themselves firmly in this battle. And I remember a message I got during this visit, Will, specifically to watch this one. To watch this commitment. Gators made a huge move, just kind of out of nowhere when Gross was on campus. He didn't raved about the visit. And then not long after that, he was just on commit watch. And even some talk that he was a silent commit after that visit. Well, some time came and went, and nothing happened. There was talk of Oklahoma being able to offer earlier playing time, and that would be weighed heavily. And, that playing time not be available at Florida earlier on. And it started to trend towards the Sooners, and maybe even Baylor getting more into it. So, we get past summer, and then this one just kind of dies. And then he announces that he's deciding today, kind of out of nowhere. I chalked him up to Oklahoma. Oklahoma media, recruiting media out there thought he was heading to Norman, but this staff didn't quit. Gross is for everything I know, Will, is at the top of the board. The staff really wanted him. This was, We'll get into the wide receiver class in just a second, but, Samorian Wingo from St. Augustine, Florida was kind of, overlooking. Florida would have taken a commitment from him, but Gross was higher on the board. Gross was the guy they wanted all along since he visited, and it was kind of clear that way. So Florida ends up getting their guy here, but top of the board for the wide receiver spot here for the Gators. Some stats right here. This past season, he played receiver and running back, like I said, as a junior. Gaining almost 1,400 scrimmage yards, 12 offensive touchdowns, caught 43 passes for 702 yards, and 5 touchdowns at 16.3 yards per reception, while rushing for 687 yards, 7 touchdowns on 11.8 yards a carry. He added 3 return touchdowns, 2 kick return, 1 punt return. In 2023, gained extensive snaps as a sophomore at running back and receiver then too. Accounted for nearly 1,800 scrimmage yards and 22 touchdowns, ran for 936 yards and 13 touchdowns on 7.6 yards per carry, while catching 45 passes for 860 yards and 9 touchdowns on 19.1 yards per reception. And then in 2022, as a freshman, finished the season with 614 yards and 4 touchdowns on 7.2 yards a carry, caught 10 passes as a freshman for 158 yards. So let's see if I can pull up these highlights, Will, and let's get those going. Got to make them full screen, pull them right here into StreamYard, and we'll get them going. A lot going on tonight, so we'll get them going. But there, now we're caught up. So that's I don't know why it won't go full screen for me.
This is what happens when they do it right at 8:30, man.
That's what happens, yeah. I don't know. Well, let me stop sharing it right quick and bring it back. But I will. Well, I'll figure that out. Go with some of your analysis there of everything we just talked about.
Well, so, he's a Texas 5A 200-meter state champion. He's got some 100-meter times of 10.75 and 10.8. So, whenever I see 100-meter times, I go, all right, well, how does that compare to Percy Harvin? So Harvin ran a 10.6 when he was in high school. So Harvin's faster, but not that much. I think, this Gross really has a profile that's really familiar for Florida fans in that he obviously was a track star, given what I just said, but also played basketball quite a bit. And so, has that aspect of things. And look, he's got a ton of experience as a receiver and a ton of experience as a running back as well. And you think about what Florida's done with Trey Wilson, and what I really think they're going to do with Trey Wilson this year is I think they're going to use Wilson all over the field. That's one of the reasons to have a guy like J. Michael Sturdivant. It's one of the reasons to be given these 5 stars in Dallas Wilson and Vernell Brown all the time they are, is to be able to then do stuff with Trey Wilson where, oh, we have a running back in. Oh, nope, we're going to split him out. And all of a sudden you get the advantage on the defense. And, we've talked a lot about 11 and 12 personnel. Nick and I wrote in the preseason magazine about they were in it 99% of the time last year. Guys like this give you the ability to have the same 11 guys on the field, but have a different personnel package. And so not only is he a skilled player, but the specifics of where that skill lie bring significant value to a team. We used to sort of scoff, I think, when Grantham would talk about positional flexibility because, if you didn't have a very good linebacker, you didn't have a very good defensive end. Oh, well, he's going to be awesome doing both of those jobs. But that's not what this is, right? This is a guy who would be a top 100 recruit as just a running back. He's a guy who's a top 100 recruit as just a receiver. And being able to combine those two things really does bring significant value to an offense that can get stale, quite honestly, at times. And having the ability to make modifications out of the same personnel package, I think is something that Florida and Billy Napier and Russ Callaway are looking for.
Yeah, so for sure, you mentioned Percy. That is a comparison that is going to get thrown around to Percy Harvin. And hey, I don't throw that around lightly. So when you start hearing that come out of Gainesville a little bit, it does kind of make the radar come up a little bit. Like, oh, okay. So like I said, top of the board, staff loves this kid. Just huge target there for the Gators. Just knowing how much the staff wanted this guy and it ends up getting him. And to me, like I said, almost kind of just out of nowhere, this cause I thought it was left for dead after it kind of didn't happen after that visit and some of the good talk was coming and it just didn't happen. But getting it done here anyway. So highlights are up there. If you're watching the YouTube version, I'll restart some of them there. But Gabe Brooks of 24/7 Sports back in June offered this analysis of Groce. A dynamic offensive weapon, experienced at running back and receiver who could play either at the high major level. Owns a receiver bill with strong pass catching production. Let me get this restarted again. Owns a receiver bill with strong pass catching production, but verified athleticism particularly stands out when stacked versus running back class. That said, multiple sources indicate a desire to play receiver. Displays impressive body control and spatial awareness in the air and along the boundaries. Plays with some subtle speed-changing modulation evident in run-after-catch ability at receiver and second-level playmaking at running back. Unorthodox that appears somewhat tight-hip, but ankle flexibility shows in foot quickness. Texas 5A 200-meter champion as a junior. Field-stretching linear speed supported by multi-sport data, but a build-up runaway aids in reaching highest gear. Reveals some gear down when redirecting. Valuable basketball participation pervasive in NFL draft results across positional spectrum, but particularly frequent in skilled player pass catchers. Likely one of the top offensive playmakers in Texas high school football in the country for 2026. Projects as a high major receiver who can give you personnel game plan flexibility with a clear long-term NFL ceiling. And you go back to April of last year, and Gabe Brooks had this to say: unique offensive playmaker with big back frame potential, but extensive reps from the backfield and a line wide as a true receiver. Strong production in both capacities as a sophomore. Owns the coveted easy speed label, unorthodox, that appears somewhat tight-hipped again, ankle flexibility evident in foot quickness. So pretty much what he was saying again in June is what he said better in April. Possesses legitimate run-by speed as a perimeter receiver, top end gear, runs away from defenders. Will, as you said, the 10.900 as a freshman, dominant at running back, even with a tall, upright build. Competes against Texas 5A competition in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area. So, of course, you don't scoff at the competition there. Projects as a difference-making, high-major offensive weapon who can foster personnel creativity. Long-term potential seems quite high, regardless of ultimate positional home. So, as I said, running back, wide receiver in high school, but going to be that receiver there for Florida. Obviously, having that background, you can see him in the Trey Wilson, Vernell Brown III, maybe roles that we've heard for those guys. But Will, just one more. I mean, you got a top 50-ish player here, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. You know, the Rivals ranking not that far behind either. As I said, he's 47th overall on the 24/7 Sports Composite, the fourth ranked athlete there. Rivals is 60th overall, the sixth ranked wide receiver on that service. And Will, you get to add him to a great haul of wide receiver class already for this Gators class with the 6'5" Marquez Daniel from Alabama and the versatile Justin Williams from Gainesville. Both those guys are in the top 200. And this staff is once again now putting the potential of signing another really good wide receiver class. And this time back to back. First you go back to the 2023 class of Trey Wilson, Aiden Mizell, and Andy Jean. And Will, I won't forget when you kind of said, it'd be good to just one of those guys show up. And, well, only one has shown up so far. We're still waiting on the breakout of Aiden Mizell. Andy Jean has since transferred. But I remember you getting scoffed at a little bit, saying, oh, no, all three of these guys are going to be doing things. And, well, history's an indicator. We'll see. See. But you go to the 2024 class, you had Tank Hawkins, TJ Abrams. And then the last class, Dallas Wilson, VB3, Nashawn Montgomery, Muiz Tunkara as well. So recruiting at this position has just been really, really good since this staff, Billy Gonzales comes in, takes over for Kerry Colbert after 1 year with Billy Napier's staff. He moved on to the NFL, bring back Billy Gonzales. And I know a lot of people scoffed at that idea too. Why bring back Billy G? He can't recruit and all that. Well, back-to-back classes here, and Billy G's name comes up a lot when you talk about these recruits. And Michael Sturdivant talking to the media and as a transfer talks about Billy G a whole lot. But you hear that name come up a good bit. But the recruiting at this position since Billy Napier's come in has just really been transformational. And really just, it's all potential right now, especially with that last class. But we've heard so much through spring, through fall camp. But it's been a position that looks so much better than when the staff took over.
Yeah, it's funny because the commentary that I made about the Gene, Mizell, Wilson class was really targeted towards that you need to stack at any position. That's what recruiting is about, right? Like the reason we knew that Georgia was going to be good at some point is because Kirby was just stacking talent after talent after talent. And that didn't mean that one recruit that he got was going to be awesome. In fact, that's what I wrote when he brought Carson Beck in. It wasn't that you knew that Beck was going to be awesome. It was that you knew that out of all the different guys he was bringing in, one of them was going to be awesome along that entire framework. And I think that's what we're finding, or at least that's what we hope to see when it comes to Florida at the wide receiver position, right? Like if Nashawn Montgomery turns into a star, then last year's class is awesome no matter what happens with all the other guys. Now, there's a possibility that if Montgomery turns into a star, that it's like a transformative wide receiver recruited class since you've got Brown and Wilson up at the top as well. But the reality is that the 5-star guys usually turn out about 65% of the time to the pros. And then if you look at the guys who are like top 50, top 75, they're like in the 30 to 35%. Then everybody else is basically 20% from there on out. So just from a statistics perspective, you got to stack people in order to be successful. Now, the nice part is if guys like Aiden Mizell and guys like Andy Jean are not successful, it may not be because they're not good players. It may be because Florida's brought in so much talent behind them that they just haven't been able to get on the field, right? Andy Jean looks at it and goes, geez, look at these guys that they're bringing in. Who knows why people transfer and all those different reasons. But, the room gets crowded real quick, right? We've even talked about this when it comes to the quarterback position. Who's really going to commit to Florida with DJ Lagway sitting there in tow? And you look at sort of the rumors this past week, or at least Wilt Fong, I think, had stuff out there about a 5-star guy potentially coming to Florida in the 2027 class. Yeah. Well, it turns out that's right when DJ Lagway won't be there, right? So you have to stack these guys. And the reason you have to stack them is because of injuries. The reason you have to stack them is because they're not 100%. And neither is this guy, right? Like he's not 100% going to be an awesome player. But the thing that makes us really excited about the different recruiting classes under Billy Napier and Billy Gonzales the last few years is if you get 1 star out of each of these recruiting classes, well, then all of a sudden 3 or 4 years later, you got 4 stars out there, right? Who are running around on the field. And part of their 11 and 12 personnel is intentional. They want to run the ball. They want to get big plays off of play action, especially with Lagway out there. And you got to show run from time to time. That means you got to have tight ends in there. But part of the reason they've run 11 and 12 personnel is they haven't had 4 or 5 wide receivers that were worth running out there onto the field over the tight ends to give better pass protection or give the appearance of run or something like that, right? And so I think one of the things I'm looking forward to this year, and certainly as the recruits come into next year's class, is you're going to have a quarterback next year, especially in Lagway, who's now established himself. Mm-hmm. And, if he's who we think he is, it's going to be a lot of fun and gun type stuff going on in the Florida offense. And what do you need for that? You need receivers. It's not a coincidence that when Steve Spurrier was here, it was like, one guy graduates. Oh, look, there's another guy who's out there catching 100 balls, right? It just felt like there was always 2 or 3 guys on the roster at any time who could go out there and just kill it. I remember when I went to college, Jabbar Gaffney was one of the ones who was like the new guy nobody knew about, who all of a sudden stepped up. I think it was my freshman year, he stepped up there. And, that just happened over and over and over and over again.
Yeah. And there you are pairing him with Rashae Caldwell and
absolutely
Taylor Jacobs right after.
Well, if you look back at Kwesi Green's time, he's obviously paired up with guys as well. So, and it wasn't just like those weren't the only 3 receiver recruits, put it that way, right? Spurrier hit because he had a bunch of them.
Yeah, 95, 96, Doring, Anthony, Green. Hilliard. It's just, and it just continued on.
Well, so it turns out that getting weapons for a guy like Lagway is both important and also has been a priority. And however they've managed to do that, I do think that some settling in terms of what goes on with the NIL and what's accepted and what's not probably has been useful for this Florida staff overall. Sort of settling into what it's going to be, and also some settling in terms of what you can't do. Those sorts of things have become a little bit more clear. And so that's certainly, I'm sure, helped the Florida staff. But look, if you look back at where Florida's been the last 2 years coming into the season, it's night and day between the 2026 recruiting class and the 2025 and the 2024. The 2024 one at least had Lagway in it. So you could sit there and go, okay, we've got that guy in the class. The question then becomes, what else do you have? And I've been writing for years that basically where your player average is kind of is where it ends up. Now, there's some data that suggests with some flips late now because of NIL and because of the transfer portal, all those sorts of things. It's a little bit less true that where you are when kickoff happens in August is where you end up from an average player rating, but Florida's going to be right around 92 when the ball gets kicked off. They have not been anywhere close to 92 on an overall player rating the entire time Napier's been here. It's been somewhere between 90.5 and 91 pretty much the entire time. And I get it, 90.5 and 92, that doesn't sound like a lot. That's the difference between Alabama and Penn State.
Yeah.
That's the kind of difference you're seeing. And look, Penn State, pretty good team. Penn State also hasn't beaten anybody in the top 10 in a decade. So, there is a difference in terms of the quality of player that those programs are bringing in. And Florida is starting to ramp things up a little bit, which obviously is needed in the SEC, is needed for Billy Napier. And now he's got to win, right? Now he's got to get the wins on the field so that these guys can come to campus, because that is the hanging chad here, right? Is that This only matters if Florida is able to convert all the recruiting, all the transfers, keeping guys in the transfer portal, keeping guys home on the defense, especially having Lagway stick around through all the noise over the last couple of years. That has to translate into wins. Otherwise, all this stuff ends up just being stuff we talked about in August and is kind of irrelevant when next August comes around. So hopeful. And obviously we're all hoping for that. And I think we all expect to see Florida win pretty big this year with Lagway at the helm.
All right, Will. So Florida came into the day 15th in the 24/7 Sports Composite, and they shoot up to 13th, passing FSU and Clemson, one spot behind Miami. Gross is the 19th commit of the class. All while teams around Florida have the 21, 22 commitments. As you said, we all just went up. You can sort by average now. So Florida is 10th in average, 91.55, as you mentioned there. So that's right below Texas, right above Miami. There when you sort by average. So as you said there, you're as you said, going into the season there, up there with Texas, who's been a recruiting juggernaut and has taken a few from you in this recruiting cycle in years past as well. But certainly going to the state of Texas, getting a big one here in Davian Groce. So certainly, I like the versatility that he brings. Certainly like the speed that he brings. That's just another aspect to what you've seen from wide receiver recruiting with this staff, Will, is they really have identified we got to get speed here. Now, you want size and speed, and you want speed in certain areas, but you want your receivers fast. And, Billy Gonzales, under the previous regime, had the reputation of recruiting the big body receivers who really couldn't separate, more the possession type of receivers. That's not the case here. I mean, Florida has recruited legit verified track speed at this position to get this thing going. Kind of going back to what you said with the design of the offense. Yeah, it is 11, 12 personnel, play action, and they wanted to let you bite on that play action a little bit, one-on-one coverage, and just outrun those DBs. And man, they've seemed to really, really concentrate on speed at this position.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, let's be honest. I think Florida's probably had more speed than we give them credit for at the wide receiver position many times. But when you got Austin Appleby and Luke Del Rio and Graham Mertz and Tyler Murphy throwing the ball, I mean, look, sometimes it's going to be tough to take the top off the defense. Now, that doesn't mean that these guys aren't a significant upgrade. I mean, they got multiple 5-stars on the roster currently at the wide receiver position. I can't remember the last time Florida had multiple 5-stars at the wide receiver position. I mean, you go back to Shorter, was a transfer in. He was a former 5-star. You go back to DeBose. He was the only 5-star on the roster at the time.
When Shorter and Grimes were together.
Yeah, but Grimes was sort of one of those tweeners where depending upon where you go in terms of like the rankings, like he wasn't a consensus 5-star guy. I mean, if you go back to Harvin, I don't even know that they had anybody else who was a 5-star at that point either. So the level of talent in the room, I guess my point is the level of talent in the room is pretty significant. And considering that you lost Badger, considering you lost Pearsall a couple years ago, considering you lost DK, like those are 3 highly, highly productive guys who haven't all had the same kind of profile coming in, but have been incredibly successful within the framework of this offense, and even without Lagway, right? I mean, you had Mertz being the one throwing to Pearsall for the most part. So there's been success at that position, and now you've got this guy who potentially can take that success to the next level. And so, I mean, if I'm a wide receiver recruit, I mean, there's 2 things. One, I love that campus. It's awesome that it's warm all year long. The co-eds are walking by all year long. Nobody's wearing winter coats, put it that way. Like there's some real advantages to being there. If the NIL money makes a difference, and if you look at Florida has pretty consistently now started to put wide receivers in the NFL under Billy Napier. Well, okay, why wouldn't you choose that as a destination, right? I mean, given Ohio State, I guess, is a place where you go, okay, yeah, but it's cold there. Am I going to Tennessee to play in that gimmick offense? Probably not. Am I going to LSU to receive passes from the Nussmeier brothers? Nah, probably not in on that either. So, I mean, I just look at it and say, like, out of all the places in the country, where would you want to go if you were a wide receiver who had deep pass catching skills? Like, I mean, where else would you want to go? And I mean, that's the only push I'd put on if I was Billy Gonzales or Billy Napier. It'd be like, the old Marv Levy thing. Where else would you rather be than right here, right now? Like, this is the time. If you're a wide receiver and you can beat a corner deep, you are going to get a ton of opportunities with Lagway because he's going to take the shot. He showed us last year, like, sometimes it looks unorthodox and sometimes if it's a short throw, he might miss it. But man, they show middle of the field closed coverage and you're going deep as a wide receiver. The ball's coming your way and it's coming your way quick. So exciting time to be a Florida Gator, exciting time to be a Florida Gator receiver. And certainly I think that's showing up in the recruiting.